Hey guys, Brian with Cajun Cardboard coming at you from the great state of Louisiana. Today's video is about the past 15 years of historical sales data for the 1986 Fleer PSA 10 and the 1986 Fleer BGS 9.5. We're talking about the Michael Jordan number 57 base rookie card. This is probably the most talked about. It's the most opinionated. It's the most disagreed upon. It's sometimes the most highly sought after. Sometimes it's the most neglected. Certainly one of the most controversial cards in the history of sports card collecting, but specifically in basketball card collecting. I would think this is the absolute cornerstone, central focal point of the hobby over the past, hell, what has it been now? What's 22 plus 14, 36 years. What I've done is I kind of went back and I used Card Ladder to kind of create modifiable sales data charts. And I have broken down the past 15 years of sales history of the 1986 Fleer Jordan in PSA 10 and BGS 9.5 condition. And I've spit out some numbers. I've got a couple of random thoughts about it, but really this is more about just sharing the data with you guys just to see what you think and solicit comments and have an open comment section and back and forth. I know people have extremely differing opinions on the past and especially the future of the PSA 10 and the BGS 9.5 Jordan and where those cards are going. I own a PSA 10 and I own a BGS 9.5. So I've got two dogs in this hunt. And so keep that in mind. I always try to be as transparent as possible on this. There was a time where I could have sold the card for significantly more than it's worth now, specifically referencing the PSA 10. I decided to hold on to it. In hindsight, it's probably certainly a mistake, because I could have bought back into it for significantly cheaper than it once was. So there's a lot of cards like that on my list of regrets that I could have got out of and got back in. This is a card that I have to have. So I have to have it as a Jordan collector. That's my personal opinion. I'm in a group chat with some of the best Jordan collectors in the entire world on Instagram, and they don't feel that urge to have this card because it's a high pop card, pop 319 in PSA 10, pop 535 in BGS 9.5. They don't feel compelled to have the card in their collection. I do. I don't feel like a Jordan collection could be complete without the 86 Fleer and then the 86 Fleer sticker in some grade. It doesn't necessarily, obviously, it doesn't need to be, a PSA 10 or a BGS 9.5, but in some grade, I feel like that card has to be in a Jordan collection to have a complete Jordan collection. But to each his own, and that's just my personal opinion. So anyway, let me get you the numbers. Here's what I did. Again, I just used Card Ladder and went back and created modifiable start and finish dates and then charted how many sales. So what you've got here is you've basically got three rows. This first row here, which I've highlighted on your screen, is going to be 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12. It's a 5-year period. So there's one 5-year period. Here's another 5-year period. Here's the last 5-year period leading all the way up to, I'm filming this on December 27th. So we're going to round it off to the end of the year, right? And so I've got 3 5-year periods. Add those up. That's 15 years back, starting with January 1st of 2008. In this top section, it is the PSA data, and then right below it is the BGS 9.5 data, and then right below that, I've added up how many times both of those have sold together. The reason I did this is because there's been a lot of talk recently about, the Jordan 86 Fleer PSA 10 is going down so much because so many are coming to the market, and I wasn't really sure if more were coming to the market than in prior years. I didn't know, and so I decided to I'm going to take this back. And I sort of, it's kind of like you're pulling a thread on a sweater, and you pull it and you pull it and you pull it, and eventually there's no thread, there's no sweater left, but there's a big pile of thread on the ground. It took me all the way back to 2008. I decided to group it into 6-month increments because it would give us a little bit more detail. If I had done it month by month, it might be more detailed, but I don't think it would have been as digestible, and I certainly wouldn't have been able to fit it all on one screen. So every column you see here there's the first 6 months of the year, there's the second 6 months of 2008. And so on and so on. So 2 columns per year, 15 years. So let's start cranking. Here's the first thing I want to draw your attention to is this first row up here is how many times the PSA 10 has sold in each half year, right? So 0, 1, 2, 2, 1, 0, 0, 2, 1, 8. It didn't sell at all for a consecutive 12-month period. So for 12 months, the PSA 10 didn't sell from late December 2010 through the first half of July, first half of 2011. So let that sink in. We didn't see one for a whole year, right? That sounds like PMG stuff. That sounds like rubies. That sounds like essential credentials now and stuff, weird stuff like that. Maybe logo men and things like that. So 17 total PSA 10 sales for the entire 5-year period from 2008 through 2012. 17. 93 BGS 9.5 sales. Look at some of these numbers. No PSA 10 sold in this 6-month period in 2008. 17 BGS 9.5 sold. That's odd to me, right? That's just strange data. 7-1 here. So at this point, 24 BGS 9.5s had sold during the time that only one PSA 10 had sold. Then it's 3-2, 2-3, whatever. And right below it, you'll see what the average sales price was during that particular 6-month period. And so, again, we're staying on this top row. I know this is going to be hard to understand and digest, but in 2008, the PSA 10 86 Fleer 57 was worth $6,700 on average. So you can see what I've done is as we go left to right and then go to row 2, left to right, and then go row 3, left to right. Every time the card sold for an average of as much or an higher average than the 6-month period before it, I highlighted it in green. And so you can see during this first 5-year period from 2008 to 2012, the card increased in value 5 times. It decreased in value. It decreased in value 5 times, right? And then if you go to the next row, it increased in value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive 6-month periods. If you go back to the prior row, it actually increased 10 consecutive 6-month periods. That's 5 straight years. The value of the PSA 10 went up each 6-month period on average. But what I want you to pay particular attention to is how many were sold. 17 times the PSA 10 sold in that 5-year period. Look at the next 5-year period from 2013 through 2017. 109. That's almost 6 times as many sales, right? It is 6 times as many sales. It's more than 6 times as many sales. And then I want you to focus on this, 136. So it jumped from 17 in that 5-year period to 2012. The next 5 years, it sold 109 times. The next 5 years, it sold 136 times. What's interesting is that the BGS 9.5 outpaced the PSA 10 way back here. Sorry, my face is in the way. I'm not sure how to fix that, but you're just gonna have to trust me. The total PSA 10 sales were 17. The total BGS 9.5 sales were 93. The BGS 9.5 actually went down in value from 2008 to 2012. The PSA 10 went up 38%. If you look at this next row here, you'll see here's the totals over here. How many times the PSA sold, how many times the BGS sold, and they both went up, not coincidentally, exactly 108% over that 5-year period. But 110 sales during the first 5-year combined for PSA and BGS. Obviously, most of those were BGS. And then the second is 240. So twice as many sold during that next 5-year period. And then to take it a step further, over the last 5 years, 332 combined PSA 10 and BGS 9.5 86 Fleers have sold. The eye-popping number and the numbers that are really going to stand out, and here I will highlight it for you on your screen, are these numbers right here. During the last 5 years, the PSA 10 has increased 691%, and the BGS 9.5 has increased 418%. And so while it does look like the sky is falling, and from some people's perspective, it is because they bought it at peak, it's easy to forget. Let's take a step back and let's look what's happened over the last 60 months, not just over the last 6 or 12 even. Let's take a really macro view of what's going on with this card. It just had such a preposterous run up, and I'll be honest with you, some of these numbers don't even tell the full story, because I know the card sold into the 700,000s. I think 2 of them sold for like 780,000 on the exact same night to the same buyer. At least that was my understanding. For some reason, those sales do not show up in Card Ladder. I'm not sure unless I made a mistake, but you can see the card got all the way up to $425,000 on average in between January and June of 2021. We all know that was the first quarter 2021 bubble. And look what the BGS 9.5 did. It got all the way up to 80,000 on average, and 52 of them sold in that 6-month period. That's like 9 a month. That's nuts. That's nine a month Gem Mint Jordan rookie cards sold. Here's some interesting stats, right? And so again, the PSA 10 and the BGS 9.5 over the last 5 years have had a very similar run. Yeah, the PSA 10 has outpaced the BGS 691% to 418%. But if you look at the green shaded, they all went on that run starting all the way back in, July, beginning/end of 2018. So 2019, 2020, first quarter 21, all of them exploded. I mean, exploded. You had a card that was $8,200 that ended up being $80,000 in 24 months. Where else in the world are assets doing things like that? You had a card, PSA 10 was $22,000 on average in the end of 2018, and it got all the way to $425,800 as an average for those 24 sales in the first half of 2021. So it's come way, way, way back. We know that it's dropped all the way now to where the average over the last 6 months is 191. The average over the last month is even lower. So we're still trying to find that saturation point. Same exact thing can be said for the BGS 9.5. So the question is, everybody's talking about it's too high pop this, it's too high pop that. The pop hasn't really changed that much. The pop really hasn't changed that much on BGS 9.5s and PSA 10s, over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It really hasn't. And so I don't think it's that pop is increasing. I think it's that people's perspective of what is high pop has changed a little bit, but I think more than anything, I think the drop is coming from macroeconomics. It's coming from world economy. It's coming from people's net worths, people's IRA. It's coming from, flippers that came into the hobby, buying this flagship card that they thought was the greatest thing in the world. And then, realizing we're not going to get rich. We're not going to sell it, for $1 million. It's starting to go down, and now they're dumping it in mass. And so that's why it's important to let's look at the last 24 months. You're talking about 35, 49, 68, 96, 118, 145, 177 sales of the cards in these two grades over the last, 2 years. That's a lot, guys. That's a lot. Just a couple notes that I wrote down. 17 sales in the first 5-year period that you see up here at the top of your screen. It's up here behind my face. You just have to trust me on that. 136 sales of the PSA 10 in the last 5 years. That's an 800% increase, right? 8 times as many PSA 10s have sold in the last 5 years as sold in the first 5 years. That's inorganic. That is an inordinate amount of sales. 136 sales for a card that's pop 319. That's damn near half the cards that are out there. And I know a lot of them are resales of the exact same card. I get that. The question is why? Why did the cards, why are more people selling the cards? I think there's a few reasons. Number one, the hobby grew. And so as people came in, rich people came in just like poor people came in, and poor people became rich people. You've heard the term cardboard millionaires. That's not a misnomer. That's true. Like, people became millionaires simply from their sports card collections if they timed it right and they had been in the hobby either for decades or as long as they got in heavy before 2015, 16, 17 even. You could become a millionaire if you poured enough money into it. So the hobby grew. That's one reason why there was more sales. There was more interested buyers. There was more demand. There was more people willing to pay 19, 20, 25, 26, 28, even 60, 200,000, $200, $100, $200,000 for a card. The card was worth more money. As the card went up in value, there were people out there who were and I'm going to put air quotes around this, true collectors. Well, you're a true collector until you're not a true collector. And when your card goes from $7,000 in 2012 and you're like, hey, best friend, come over to my house, look at this Jordan card I have worth $7,000. And then that card runs up to $208,000. Now you're calling your friend over to look at the red and the blue Tesla that you decided to buy instead of holding this little piece of cardboard. And so collectors became investors, or collectors became very willing to cash out. Maybe with the foresight that they could buy back in later and that the run up was just too steep, too fast. And so I'm not certainly condemning anybody who sold out of the card. I wish I had, and I wish I had bought back in. I just know I have to own the card. But anyway, that's one theory, is that the card was worth so much, people just started to cash out of it. I don't think it's a theory. I think it's a fact. And everything that I'm saying about the PSA 10 certainly can apply to the BGS 9.5, just on a little bit smaller scale. It was easier to sell. Like in 2008 to 2012, it was just harder to sell cards. There's just a million platforms now with more eyeballs. There's more eyeballs on each platform. And so it just became a lot easier to sell cards in 2018, 19, 20, and 21 than it was in 2008, 9, and 10. And so for that reason, that's why you'll see such a huge number of increased sales as well. It's just one more reason. And then the other thing is institutional money, right? Sports card funds and alternative asset funds and LLCs and, conglomerates and partnerships and investment groups and just like people with FU money who never messed with sports cards, smelled the money, came into the hobby, bought all this crap up. I shouldn't say crap, bought a lot of these types of cards up, thinking that it was going to, run to the moon. And it kind of did. It may not have gotten to Mars, but it got to the moon. And then they decided to drop it. So that's just a few of the reasons why I think there's been such an increased amount of sales. But to put the theory to the test, the theory is the card being sold, too much, or is it being sold so much that's one of the reasons that it's driving the price of the card down? I think that is one of the reasons. I think the other reason is everybody's worth less. Money is worth less because they printed a bunch of it. They gave it out to a bunch of people. People's 401ks are worth less. With the dollar's worth less, and your 401k is worth less, and your IRA is worth less, and your crypto is worth less, and your fill in the blank other alternative assets are worth less, and your sports cards are worth less. And so for that reason, there's less disposable income out there right now. And I think that's really what's putting the pinch, not only on these two cards and this card and these two grades, but on a lot of, even smaller cards. I think that's what's putting a pinch on our hobby right now. And it's just one of those deals you're going to have to ride it out. So here's the deal. It hasn't gone up every month. This card in 9.5 and 10, there were months where it's gone down. In fact, back in 2016, 17, the PSA 10 went down 3 months in a row, and it went down a lot. It went down from, 24,000 average to 19.4 average. That's, 1/7. What is that? About 15%, something like that. So there's been pullbacks before. Obviously, there's never been a pullback like we've had from the first quarter of 2021, but there's also never been a run-up like we had into the first quarter of 2021. So, it is something where you want to just kind of take a step back and look at start to finish. And I understand there's a precipitous mountain in the middle of every graph that we look at, especially for these two cards and these two grades, or this card and these two grades. The question is, where's this thing going to settle at? I don't know. I know it's got a long way to go to get back to 2018 prices. It was $24,200 in 2018. So, I picked one up when I bought mine somewhere in early 2020 when it was about $40,000. I never thought I would spend that much money on a sports card in my life. I never fathomed it, but the reason I could do it is because I was also making, literally 1,500% on base Prism cards that I bought raw, graded, and flipped, and bought thousands of them. And so there was just a lot more money to go around. And I certainly wasn't alone. I wasn't some genius who figured out you could buy raw, grade, and flip and just buy low and sell high. It was real easy to do in the hobby. And therefore, $40,000 in the year, 2021 is like, $5,000 in the year 2016 in the sports card market. It was just a really weird time, and we just didn't really have a good perspective of what the hell was going on at the time. Some other interesting little notes that I wrote down, just observing the chart that you see on your screen. The BGS 9.5 pop is 535. That card has sold 420 times in the last 15 years. That's 80% of the world's population of the Jordan 9.5 has sold in the last 15 years. PSA, 82%. It's a 319 card, and there's been 262 sales in the last 15 years. And that's, keep in mind, well, shit, let's take out the 17. Just in the last 10 years, there's been 247 sales. So that is, let's see, at 10 years is 120 months. That's 247. is that, let's see, 10 years? Oh, I got it broken down this way. Yeah. Okay, so 245. Sorry, I did that math wrong. 245 times the PSA 10 has sold in the last 10 years. That's 24 times a year. That's 2 a month on average for the last 10 years. It's just too common, right? It can't be that way. It's got to slow down. And it doesn't look like it is, considering that in the last half of this year, even after the card's gone down 100%, more than 100% in value, or I should say 50% in value, it's gone down over the last 6 months of 2022, all the way back from the peak in 2021. It's still sold 19 times in the past 6 months. And the BGS 9.5 has sold 32 times. That's an all-time record. That is by far the most that the BGS 9.5 has ever sold. That card has sold, let's see, that's over 150 times in the last 3 years. I mean, that's bananas, man. That's like 8 times a month, it seems like. I think that's right. I did some real quick math there. So something to keep in mind. At some point, this will slow down. The card will find its way into collectors' hands and the prices will stabilize. I don't think it'll ever get back to $750,000 personally, or at least not, in my lifetime. Because I think there's a lot of people like me that have the card that if they ever see a precipitous rise like that in a short time period, I think we've learned our lesson from the last explosion in early 2021 and late 2020, early 2021, is that we won't let it get that far, right? There's not every card is a grail card. Not every card, especially a card like this where you can always go out and buy another one because they're always available. You're not going to need it to run to 750,000 for people to take profits. Even people like me who need to keep the card. If this card, if somebody gave me 500,000 for the card 6 months from now, I would sell the card because I know I can always go back and buy the card. But there are cards that come to market now that have Michael Jordan on the face of the card that I can't pick up whenever I freaking feel like it. You can't just throw money at a Michael Jordan collection. If you want an elite collection, you've got to wait, and you've got to have save searches, and you've got to have friends all over the world, and you've got to keep your eyes peeled, and you've got to throw money at it. So it's a weird combination. But these are two cards where you can just throw money at it because you can always go find one. It's never hard to find one of these cards, and so that's what makes it a little bit unique. Because it's not the rarest card in the world. So anyway, that's some thoughts there. What else is interesting is if we go back here, look at this. I'm going to highlight this for you. In 2008, the PSA 10 was worth $6,700 on average. And by the way, there's a zero here, none sold. I just used the sales for the month before. Same thing I did here. I just used the sales amounts for the month prior. So the card was worth about $6,700. You just have to trust me. And the BGS 9.5 was worth $4,300. So PSA was worth 1.6 more than the BGS 9.5. Today, the PSA 10 is worth 4.99 times as much based on the average sales over the last 6 months. 4.99 times as much. And that fluctuates daily every time one of these cards is sold. So that's just something to keep in mind. And what's even more interesting, I know some of you guys are super young, and I'm 48, and I wasn't collecting back in 2006. But in 2006, the BGS 9.5 was worth more than the PSA 10. And so that's, another reminder that PSA is king right now. It may not always be king. BGS was king of kings back in 2006. And the BGS 9.5 was worth more than the PSA 10 was. Another interesting note is, and this was interesting because I looked at it in Card Ladder, going all the way back to 2006, the BGS 9.5 is up 317%. The PSA 10 is up 2,700%, so 9 times as much. So the PSA 10 ended up being a significantly better investment. Anyway, I just wanted to share some data that I did because I'm a dork and I like Jordan and I like this particular card especially. And I'm always curious about the history of it. And I like to kind of look into the future and try to prognosticate, what's next? What's going to happen? Why is this happening? Why is the card, why did it go up so much? Why is it going down so much? I don't think it's one factor. I think there's a myriad of factors, and it's been talked about ad nauseum. And a lot of the factors that apply to this particular card and these grades would apply to a Luka Doncic Silver Prism as well, or whatever. But I don't think high population high population is the reason that this card's seen its demise over the last 18 to 24 months. I don't think the high population of 319 and 535 is necessarily the reason we're seeing this. I think there's more to it than that. And so let me know what you think in the comments. I'm curious, is there anything else? Again, I can't make the video 15 hours. I could keep talking about these cards and these numbers forever. Did any of these numbers stick out to you? Is it shocking that the PSA was worth less than the BGS, as recently as 17 years ago? Is it shocking to you that the PSA has outperformed the BGS by 9x over the last 17 years? I was kind of shocked by that. Despite the fact that the card has dropped from like 780,000 to 190,000, it's still up almost 700% over the last 5 years. That is just nutso type numbers. It's still hard to process, which makes me think that's too much. That's still too much. So it's still going to come down more, which means maybe I should still sell mine right now and go wait and just buy another one 6, 12, 18 months from now. I don't know. But one thing that did give me comfort is we've seen something like this before. There have been months in the past where the BGS 9.5 and the PSA 10 have gone down, down, down in consecutive 6-month increments. And then rebounded and rallied in a huge way and jumped right back up. So maybe I'm naive to think that is going to happen. I know we're probably not at the bottom, but it's getting shallower, and the down and to the right curve is getting less and less steep. So that's a good sign, not just for this card, but for all cards. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Again, just a random video. I don't have a magical answer for you. I just wanted to show you guys some numbers because I was going to plug this in and do my own research anyway. And these are some of the numbers that popped up. Let me know what you think about this card. Don't just flame the card because you don't have the card. Just literally think about it. And let me know what you think about the data. Anyway, as always, I love bringing you guys Jordan content. If you like the video, hit the like button. I wish I had a magical answer for you of where the card's going or what I think it's doing. My answer is I have no freaking clue what's going to happen to this card. If you told me it was worth 100,000 in 6 months, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me it was worth 300,000 in the next 6 months, I wouldn't be, well, that probably would surprise me. But if you told me it stabilized and started to run back up, that wouldn't surprise me at all. It's really going to hinge on what's going on in the world and how much disposable income people have and how, if we, can we suppress this fear that we have dealing with this inflation, at least in my country, in the United States, dealing with inflation where everything costs more, but people are making less and people are going to start losing jobs and some pretty rough times ahead, for small businesses and big businesses and the employees of those businesses throughout our country. Times are going to be a little bit tough. As easy as it was to go, create money in, 2019, 20, and 21, it's going to be that difficult to sustain and create money, I think, in the next probably 6, 12, 18 months. So we'll see what kind of effect that has on this card. I do know this. There comes a time where when cards dip to a certain point, people with a lot more money than me, people with FU money, are going to see it as an investment opportunity and they're going to jump in and they're just going to buy them all. It's happened. I mean, I know Rick Probstein has 24 of these bad boys. I don't know what his price point is on these, but I know there's people out there with a lot of these cards. So the true population, the true availability of the card may not necessarily be 319 and 535. Again, that's conjecture. I just know a few people have a lot of copies of this card. I'm lucky enough to have one copy of each and happy to just kind of sit on it for now because, I'm content to mess around and do other things in the Jordan market as well. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hit the like button if you don't mind. I never ask y'all to do that, but I'm asking you to do it now. Apparently it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. And so any way you can help me without sending me a bunch of cash, please do it. Hit the like button. Also, if you're watching this video and you watch this long, I ramble, I speak with an accent. I like to talk about Jordan. I like to talk about the sport of NBA basketball. And so if you like those things and those topics, fantasy basketball, hit the subscribe button. I've got a lot of great stuff coming out. Go look back through my playlist. Go look at some of the past videos. I think almost anybody can find something that they like about the sport of basketball, the history of basketball, the future of basketball card collecting, or fantasy basketball. And then hit the bell icon for notifications so you know when when I drop a new video. It's right now, it's about 7 videos a week. There's 7 days in a week, and usually I have 7 to 8 videos a week, believe it or not. I'm also on the Luka Nation Network right now. On Mondays, I do PWCC Weekly Auction recaps, which is a great way for you guys to kind of keep your fingers on the pulse of the hobby and what's going on with basketball card prices in the high-end market. And so those episodes and those PWCC Weekly Auction recaps come out every single Monday. So make sure you're subscribed not only to this Cajun Cardboard channel that you're watching right now, but also the Luka Nation Network. And it's Luka Nation, Nation Network. Hit that subscribe button as well and catch me on Mondays. I think they've got a playlist created just for me. So as always, thank you guys for watching. Keep collecting. I do want your comments. I'm serious. Comment below. Let me know what you think about the future of this card. Up, down, when, how long. Don't just say it's going down, blah, blah, blah. Tell me why. Tell me why it's going down. Tell me why it's going to rebound. Tell me it's never going to rebound, but tell me why. I want to know why. I don't just want to know what. I want to know why. Thanks for watching. Keep collecting. Stay positive in the hobby. And peace.